My name is Kate Blackmore. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I'm also an educator. So we created the kind of scenario, like the framework for the documentary, which is like constructed, but then everything you see within that framework is real, like as it would be on any other set. So Tightrope came about by necessity, really. So we originally tried to get access to a bunch of sets that Claire was working on in order to show her work as part of the documentary. But at that time, it was COVID. And so people were very reluctant to kind of open up their sets to anyone else anyway, and except for kind of, the people who really had to be there. And also sex scenes are always done on closed sets, so only essential crew. So we were there was sort of lots of barriers in place for us to get access to Claire's work. And so I said to Claire, like, what if we created our own film set? And she was incredibly supportive of that because it meant that everyone involved could give consent. So before we hired any of our crew, before we cast any of the actors, like everyone knew what we were doing. We were doing this kind of experiment, which was primarily a documentary, but we were creating these dramatic scenes within it. So yeah, in order to create Tightrope, we invited Kieran Darcy Smith onto the team. He was really interested in what we were trying to do, and he was really up for it. Like, I think a lot of directors would have felt a bit intimidated or a bit exposed by being part of a documentary that showcased their process. But Kieran was really amazing and sort of open to it. So yeah, he agreed to write a kind of outline of a feature film, and then he fleshed out 3 intimate scenes within that feature film outline, which were intimate scenes of varying degrees of intimacy. So there was sort of kissing and simulated oral sex and simulated sex. And initially I was like, Kieran, let's just go like outrageous. Like let's have an orgy scene. Let's have like all of this stuff, and like let's really test Claire and see how like show the audience what her the tools of the trade are and like her tips and tricks and stuff. And he's like, great. But he really struggled with the 3rd scene. So everything that you see in the film in relation to the 3rd scene is real. Like he really struggled to write it. It wasn't fully fleshed out when we cast the actors. And so when Sarah came on board, she didn't really know what the 3rd scene entailed. So she couldn't really agree to anything at that point. Like a lot of people had an issue with the fact that we didn't reveal that it was that it was a sort of film that was created in the service of the documentary. Because they thought that maybe there was something kind of artificial about it. But actually, I mean, there was a script, there was the production process was the same that you would see on any other film. And it could have actually been turned into a film if, we had the money to make it. But we didn't. So we could only make the 3 scenes. So yeah, it was like a real film set in every kind of sense of the word.
Why does the male gaze persist even in films made by women, regardless of sexual orientations, identities, and cultural backgrounds? Do you think that played a role even in this film, even though you were bringing attention to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that's so difficult to avoid because we're all brought up on cinema that is predominantly still made by men, and even if it's not a man, male director, often the production companies are run by men, and like the industry is still very patriarchal. So we are consuming culture through that perspective, for our whole lives. And so when it comes to our turn to make films, we just do what we've been what we've learned and what we've been taught, and some of that stuff is really subconscious. So you have to really unlearn it and be really aware of what you're doing. And that was something that we were very, very cognizant of. And like we had a mostly female crew on the documentary and on the drama, and you can see that on screen, which is really great. And we had Justine Kerrigan, who was the cinematographer for the doco and the drama scenes, and she was very aware of the male gaze. And Kieran wasn't, because he's a man, and he's from a different era of filmmaking where a lot of that stuff wasn't interrogated like it is today. So he was really open to being critiqued about, certain framing and certain choices. So I started this project probably 6 years ago now. The origin of it was that I read an article online about an intimacy coordinator. And back then it was such a new thing. I hadn't really heard anything about it. And the article kind of went through, that the fact that sex scenes were created without any support for so many years throughout the history of film. And I was really sort of surprised that actors had never really had any support on set before. And so I was really interested in this role and how it was kind of changing the power hierarchies on a film set and basically giving more agency to actors. And I thought that it could be a good lens through which to, explore a film about the film industry. So yeah, that was really the starting point. And then after that, I basically just Googled intimacy coordinators, and Claire Warden's name came up, and she was one of the founders of the discipline in the film and TV world. It had already existed in theatre, but it wasn't really sort of something that was a role in film and TV at that point. So yeah, she was really kind of consolidating the discipline in New York, and she agreed to have a chat with me. I was going to New York for a different project, so we met up and had a coffee. And I was like, why don't we make a film together? And she was like, great, let's do it. And so the film evolved over many, many conversations with Claire, and she was heavily involved in the particular approach that we took with the film as well. So yeah, it was a real collaboration between the two of us. And of course, Beth and Sarah and everyone else, as is every film.